tech director Simon, and then Shaun, who is our front-end developer, but we'll be chatting about things mobile, about accessibility and sustainability. So I'm just going to pose the first question, and then either one of you can decide whether to take it or not. But the first question is, what does accessibility in mobile apps mean to you as a developer?
I think I'll take that one. In apps and websites in general, it just means empathy, really. Just making accessible to as many users as possible. Generally, just think of ourselves really as the average user of that journey. There's an array of people that actually use apps, vision impaired, cognitively impaired, deaf people, just people with low income. You should cater for all of them. Everyone should be able to have access to the same features and information. Well, that's about it.
Awesome. So, Shaun, can you walk us through some practical ways that you build accessibility into apps or websites at Bluegrass itself?
Well, the starting point is just using the correct semantic markup, really. Most of the things are already built in. Generally, when you start dating, you just want to build a shiny new thing. And you build your own custom thing, and then you forget to use the correct markup and correct elements. And then a lot of context is missing. So, for example, you build a button, but you build it from scratch with your own fancy code. But then a screen reader gets to it and it doesn't know what to do with it because it doesn't know it's a button. Um, so, yeah, just generally we use the correct semantic markup, and that does all the heavy lifting.
Are there any accessibility tools or guidelines that you rely on during development?
Well, it depends on what you're building, really. If you're building a website, then a Lighthouse does a lot for you, and just use a screen reader. When you're building an app, similar, you just use the correct markup, make sure the design does align for you, and actually downloading a screen reader for your phone and going through your app does a lot. I would recommend it.
And what's one common mistake that developers make when it comes to accessibility, and how can we avoid that?
I'm going to repeat myself again. They try and build something from scratch. So many times they use a generic wrapper element and then try and build something that already exists. And then a screen reader or any accessible device gets to it and they don't know what it is or what you intended it to be. So I can see someone is quite new to accessibility just from looking at the elements that they're using. Uh, yeah, that's the main pitfall. Doing your own thing, but not using correct markup.
And Simon, we're just going to switch topics a little bit, but how would you define sustainability in the context of mobile app development?
Cool. Thanks, Nicky. It's a good question. Sustainability for me is about reducing the amount of energy that your application or website or service consumes. That's the bottom line, basic definition, making it use as little energy power as possible.
So would you say that is the carbon footprint that people are always talking about when concerning themselves with sustainability, is the energy used for an application?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it can be used in a lot of different ways because, your application might be on your phone or it's on your computer, but it's not just the power that your phone's consuming, although that is also relevant. If you have inefficient code that's using a lot of CPU on your device, that means you're going to have to charge your battery more often, which again consumes power from the grid. That's all is carbon footprint. And if but then more crucially, probably the larger carbon footprint is all the backing services that your application's talking to, the servers it's running on. What is their carbon footprint like? How much power are they using? What is your architecture? So all of that is the carbon footprint of the application, and even the actual development process itself has a carbon footprint. How much power do we use when we build the thing?
So off the back of that, how can developers reduce the carbon footprint for developing or when developing?
Yeah, so a nice parallel for me is that to get better energy gains, your app needs to be faster. And so it's a direct correlation between the performance of your app, the speed of your app, and how much energy it uses. So hyper focusing on performance is the best way by far uh, to reduce carbon footprint of an existing application. But there's a lot of things you can do in the process. There's design decisions and UX decisions you can make, technology decisions, which cloud providers have the lowest carbon footprints. How do you, choosing the technologies you use based on how much impact they could have on the environment and what it has a big impact as well. Having a dark mode that is by default on in your app, that reduces the amount of energy that's used on the device. Again, it has to charge less. So all of those kinds of little things do add up to reducing carbon footprint.
Okay. So how do you balance then, creating high performing features while still maintaining sustainability and accessibility standards? This one, I suppose, is for either Simon or Shaun to answer.
Well, from a sustainability perspective, high performing features, you don't have to. As I said, performance is directly correlated. So you focus on performance, you get sustainability, which is great. We all like to build fast things, and fast things means more sustainable apps. However, there is a caveat to that, in that if you want to use the new shiny toys, things like AI and blockchain in particular is notoriously energy hungry and very inefficient computationally. So, it's got to be a decision you make. AI as well, the cost of training these models and then inferencing using them and actually using them in your application is a lot heavier than just a typical API backing service. So you have to be very careful about how much and where you use these kinds of tools in your application. So that's the part where you do have to balance. And again, cost. The most efficient and performant app could cost a lot more to build. It might cost less to run in the long term. So that's again a balancing act you have to maybe sell to the client. But yeah, the balance isn't necessarily on performance. It's more on features and budget.
Okay, so what's one app or feature that was not built by us that you think nailed both, sustainability and accessibility? I'm actually curious to see what both of you say.
It's a very difficult one, because if you're it's almost invisible. To us, it's an invisible thing, right? Accessibility to a sighted and not disabled person is an invisible thing. You don't know an app is accessible until you're blind or deaf and you're trying to use it, and you can't because things like Shaun said are not signposted correctly or using the correct elements. We can't. It's very difficult for us not disabled users to tell, and that's why Shaun recommended things like downloading a screen reader as a developer, because it's something it's a question for someone who is disabled in this way to answer, and I'm sure there are awards for this, but I couldn't tell you. I know we built accessible things, but someone else built. It's not something I've seen, because I use apps normally. I don't use the screen reader feature on my Instagram or whatever. And also from a sustainability perspective, you can't see it directly, but you can see fast apps. If your app is fast, it's sustainable, basically. It's 90% of the way there to being sustainable, because like I said, that's a direct correlation. I can't really call out any specific apps though. It's very difficult, like on the spot, to say this app is definitely performant, therefore it's sustainable when it could be, running on some cloud infrastructure that isn't.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That was a very political answer where I completely talked around the point, but hopefully I made sense.
Yeah, you did.
To be honest, I haven't actually gone through many other people's apps with the screen reader on. But Spotify is actually quite good. That's the one I can say. Also, just it's in dark mode by default as well, so it is more performant or more sustainable.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
So there you go. We have an example of
yeah, Spotify.
sustainability and
Thanks,
accessibility
Shaun.
practices.
Yeah.
Thanks, Shaun. You didn't have to end with just my political answer for that.
And on a high note.
And then final question, so I will stop keeping you guys and let you get back to your day jobs. If you could give one piece of advice to a dev who's just starting out in building, conscious code, what would it be?
You want to go first?
Sure. I mean, I think the most important thing, and Shaun's probably going to say this too, because it's what he started with, is putting yourselves in the shoes of your users, and in the shoes of the planet. So, empathy empathy for both users and the planet is very important. You're not going to be able to build sustainable solutions if you don't care about it, and you're not going to be able to build accessible solutions if you don't care about those disabled users. So you need to have that conscious feeling and that empathy for both the planet and your users. That's my answer.
For
Did
me,
he steal your answer, Shaun?
no, not completely, like half of it at least. Mine is just try. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to tick all the boxes on your first try. Something is better than nothing. Just trying to make something accessible is already 90% of the way. Your site will already be better than 90% of the way because it's rough out there for accessible people.
Oh, that's really good advice. I love that. I think a lot of us get in our own heads and we want to do something so perfect that we forget to even try.
It's good life advice.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Thank you so much, Simon and Shaun. That's all for now for today. Thank you for having a chat about accessibility and sustainability. And yeah, hopefully the viewers and listeners learned something new as well.
Thank you, Nicky. It's great to chat.